Welcome to my channel, Rise Up with Steve. Please hit like, subscribe, and don't forget to share with your friends. Let me tell you something about women that most people learn too late. When a woman is talking, when she's explaining, complaining, crying, or even arguing, she still cares. That's effort. That's investment. That's her saying, I believe this can still be fixed. But when she goes silent, that's not peace. That's not patience. That's not her being calm. That's her being done. A woman doesn't wake up one day and decide to stop speaking. Silence is built. It's built from broken promises, from being ignored, from feeling unheard, unprotected, and unappreciated. Every time she spoke and nothing changed, a brick was added to that wall of silence. See, women are natural communicators. They will tell you what hurts them again and again, hoping this time you'll listen. They don't want perfection. They want effort. They want respect. They want to feel chosen, not convenient. But here's the part men misunderstand. When a woman finally stops explaining herself, she has already made her decision internally. She has cried in private. She has prayed. She has replayed every conversation in her head. And once she realizes that her words don't matter to you, she removes her voice from your life. Silence is not revenge. Silence is clarity. It's her saying, I've said everything I needed to say and nothing changed. And by the time you notice she's quiet, emotionally distant, no longer asking questions, no longer reacting, she's already gone. Maybe not physically yet, but emotionally. She packed her bags a long time ago. A woman's silence is dangerous because it means she has accepted the truth about you. Not the potential, not the promises, the reality. And once a woman accepts reality, she stops fighting it. When a woman talks, she is still choosing you. That's the part most people don't understand. Her words are not noise. They are effort. Every time she explains how she feels, every time she repeats herself, every time she gets emotional or frustrated, she is investing energy into the connection. Talking is her way of saying, I'm still here. I still believe something good can come from this. A woman does not speak because she enjoys conflict. She speaks because silence scares her more than confrontation. She would rather argue than feel invisible. She would rather cry than feel irrelevant when she raises an issue. It's not to start a fight, it's to save the relationship. That's her reaching out, hoping you'll meet her halfway. People often mistake a woman's emotions for drama, but emotions are just unfiltered truth. When she's talking, she's being honest about what she needs, what hurts, and what she expects. She's giving direction. She's telling you how to love her better. That's not weakness. That's courage. But here's the reality. Every time her words are ignored, minimized, laughed at, or delayed with empty promises, something inside her starts to shut down. She doesn't stop caring all at once. It happens slowly. First, she repeats herself. Then she simplifies her words. Then she stops explaining and starts observing. And eventually, she realizes she's talking to someone who hears her voice but doesn't listen to her heart. Silence doesn't come from nowhere. Silence is learned behavior. It's learned when speaking changes nothing, when effort is one-sided, when respect is conditional, when love feels like a request instead of a priority. When a woman is silent, it's not because she has nothing to say. It's because she has said everything already. She has replayed the conversations in her mind. She has tried different tones, soft, angry, patient, emotional. And when none of it works, she stops wasting her breath. That's why silence is emotional withdrawal. It's her protecting herself. Talking requires vulnerability. Silence requires strength. Because staying quiet when you still feel deeply is one of the hardest things a woman can do. A silent woman is not calm. She's resolved. She's no longer fighting for understanding because she understands now. She understands who you are, what you're willing to do and what you're not. And once that understanding settles in, the desire to explain disappears. The danger of silence is that it looks peaceful on the outside, but it's final on the inside. There's no arguing, no pleading, no emotion left to negotiate with. She has detached emotionally, and emotional detachment is the beginning of the end. Talking means hope. Silence means acceptance. And the moment a woman chooses silence, she is choosing herself. She is choosing peace over pain, dignity over disappointment. and self-respect over waiting for change that never comes. That's why you should never ignore a woman who is still talking. Because the day she stops, you won't get another warning. Silence is never sudden. It is built over time, brick by brick, from repeated disappointments, broken promises, and feeling ignored. When a woman feels that her words, feelings, or needs don't matter, something shifts inside her. Every conversation where she was dismissed, every time she shared her heart and got nothing in return, every effort she made that went unrecognized, these moments accumulate. And over time, they form an invisible wall around her emotions, a wall that her voice cannot penetrate. She doesn't choose silence lightly. She chooses it because talking has become futile. Every woman has a limit. No matter how patient, understanding, or loving she is, there is a point when continuous emotional labor without reciprocal effort becomes unbearable. Silence is the signal that she has reached that limit. When she stops talking, she is no longer seeking to be heard. She is protecting herself from further hurt. She has already tried speaking. She has already tried explaining. She has already tried hoping. And the result has been the same. She was ignored, undervalued, or dismissed. Silence is the self-preservation that rises out of repeated disappointment. When a woman's silence starts, she may still be around physically. She may still participate in daily routines, answer questions, or nod politely. But emotionally, she is withdrawing. Her mind is no longer invested in convincing someone of her worth or her perspective. Her heart is beginning to retreat. She's learning that actions speak louder than words, and the actions she's seen do not match the words she shared. She understands that someone who ignores her repeatedly is unlikely to change overnight, and she starts to emotionally detach in order to survive. Silence also signals clarity. When a woman has spoken enough to teach, to guide, and to express herself fully, silence becomes her way of drawing boundaries. She has stopped negotiating her value and stopped explaining her needs because she has finally accepted the truth of the situation. Silence is not about punishment, it is about recognition. She recognizes that she deserves more than empty words. She recognizes that she cannot make someone appreciate or respect her through talking alone. And in recognizing this, she chooses to step back, to protect her peace, and to preserve her dignity. The process of becoming silent is gradual. It begins with repeated small frustrations, being interrupted, ignored, or dismissed. It grows when she realizes that even her most heartfelt conversations are met with indifference. It culminates when she decides that continuing to talk will no longer change anything. At that moment, she stops trying to fix the unfixable. She stops giving herself away emotionally to someone who cannot meet her where she is. Silence becomes her final statement, her declaration of self-respect and emotional independence. There's also power in a woman's silence. It forces reflection. It forces observation. When she stops talking, the weight of her absence is felt more than any words could convey. People often underestimate the depth of a silent woman because they mistake quiet for submission, but nothing could be further from the truth. She is neither submissive nor weak. She is strong enough to accept reality, wise enough to stop wasting her energy, and courageous enough to protect her heart. Her silence is a mirror, reflecting not her lack of care, but her full awareness and final decision. Understanding a woman's silence requires empathy and attention. It requires recognizing that her quietness is not indifference, but the culmination of repeated emotional efforts. Her silence is her way of saying that she has given everything she could and will no longer compromise her peace. It is her invisible boundary, her final line, and her declaration that her emotional energy is no longer negotiable. Once she reaches this point, there is little anyone can do to change her mind because the decision is already made quietly, decisively, and permanently. Women communicate to fix things, not to complain. That's a truth most people never understand. When a woman speaks about what's bothering her, she is not trying to start a fight or create drama. She is not trying to point fingers or prove someone wrong. She is speaking because she cares enough to want a solution, because she believes that the situation can be improved, because she wants harmony, connection, and understanding. Every word she speaks is an attempt to bridge a gap, to heal a wound or to restore trust. Talking is her tool for repairing the relationship, and it is her way of saying, I still believe we can make this work. When she brings up issues repeatedly, it's not because she is unreasonable or nagging. It's because she's desperate for change, and she hopes that by expressing her feelings in different ways, she might finally be heard. She tries to articulate her emotions in the clearest, most relatable way possible, tailoring her tone, words, and approach to fit the listener. Sometimes she is patient, sometimes she is frustrated, but always her goal is resolution. Her communication is intentional. It is a deliberate effort to protect the relationship she values. Women also communicate because they are emotionally intelligent. They feel the subtle shifts in tone, behavior, and energy that others might miss. They sense the undercurrents of tension, dissatisfaction, or neglect, and they address these feelings before they grow into larger conflicts. They speak to clarify, to prevent misunderstandings, and to ensure that both parties are on the same page. Her words are a lifeline for connection, a way to prevent emotional distance from forming. Ignoring her voice is like ignoring a warning signal before a storm. If you dismiss it long enough, the consequences can be severe. Communication is also her way of setting boundaries. By expressing what hurts, what disappoints, and what she expects, she defines the limits of what is acceptable. She tells you, in words you cannot ignore, how she wishes to be treated. And yet, when her words are dismissed, minimized, or met with indifference, it erodes her trust. She realizes that her effort to fix the situation is unappreciated and that her voice has no impact. When this continues, her energy shifts from trying to repair to trying to protect herself. A woman's silence often follows this pattern. She communicates to fix, but when speaking no longer produces change, silence becomes her defense. It is not anger, though it may feel like it to the other person. It is not laziness, though it may appear that way. It is a conscious decision to stop investing in something that no longer values her voice. Her silence is the natural result of repeated attempts to resolve problems being ignored. When she stops trying to fix what is broken through words, it is a sign that she has accepted reality. She cannot fix it if the other person refuses to meet her halfway. Moreover, women communicate because they desire respect. She wants to be seen, heard, and valued. She wants her emotions to matter, her concerns to be addressed, and her needs to be met. When she communicates and nothing changes, she feels invisible. Her patience diminishes, her efforts lose meaning, and her hope fades. Silence is her way of reclaiming power. By withdrawing her voice, she signals that her energy and attention are no longer to be taken for granted. She is no longer negotiating her value. She is no longer pleading for acknowledgement. Understanding that a woman communicates to fix, not complain, changes everything. It shows that her words are not an obstacle but a gift, not a critique but a chance for growth. Ignoring her communication is not harmless. It is the seed that eventually grows into silence. And once she chooses silence, it is a decision born from wisdom, clarity, and the realization that her effort must be spent where it is truly appreciated. By the time she stops speaking, she's already invested everything she can. Her silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, strength, and finality. It is important to remember that when a woman's words stop, it is not indifferent. It is a reflection of reality. She has spoken enough to fix, to clarify, and to express. When nothing changes, silence becomes her final act of self-respect, her declaration that she will no longer compromise her peace, her boundaries, or her heart. Communication was her attempt to save the situation. Silence is her decision to protect herself. And that is the ultimate truth. She communicates to fix, and when she can no longer fix it, she stops speaking entirely. A silent woman has already made her decision internally. This is something many people fail to recognize until it is too late. By the time she stops talking, she has gone through every stage of understanding, every moment of reflection, and every internal debate about what to do. She has thought long and hard about the situation, about the person, and about her own emotional needs. She has replayed conversations, analyzed behaviors, and considered the possibilities of change. By the time her lips are sealed, her mind has already reached a conclusion. She knows what she deserves. She knows what she will no longer accept. And she knows that continuing to argue or explain is pointless. Women are natural communicators, and for her to stop communicating is significant. It does not happen impulsively or out of spite. It is the culmination of countless moments where she tried to express herself only to be misunderstood, ignored, or dismissed. Every time she repeated herself, hoping for acknowledgement, she measured the response and weighed the effort. And when she consistently saw that her words had no effect, she began to withdraw. This withdrawal is not a temporary mood, it is a calculated, intentional decision. She is determined that silence is more powerful than words in a situation where words have repeatedly failed. Her silence is not empty. It is full of reflection, thought, and resolve. She has already envisioned the outcomes of her choices, analyzed the impact of staying or leaving, and decided what is best for her peace of mind. While she may still interact, politely smile when necessary, or maintain appearances, internally, she's disengaged. Her emotional investment has shifted inward. She is conserving her energy for herself rather than wasting it on someone who does not recognize her worth. By going silent, she is no longer bargaining for love or attention. She is choosing to prioritize her own well-being. There is also clarity in a woman's silence. When she has spoken, expressed, and explained enough without change, she gains an understanding that words alone cannot alter reality. Silence becomes her final, quiet statement. It reflects acceptance, not resignation, but clarity. She has acknowledged the truth of the situation, that her voice may not matter to the other person, that her efforts may not be reciprocated, and that her needs may remain unmet. This understanding allows her to stop trying, stop convincing, and stop waiting for change that is unlikely to come. A woman's silence also communicates boundaries without confrontation. While she may not speak her decision aloud, her quietness signals that she is no longer available for negotiation or compromise. She has mentally decided where she stands, what she will tolerate, and what she will not. Her silence is a protective measure, a way of saying that her emotional energy is no longer expendable on someone who has failed to recognize her worth. Unlike anger or argument, silence is steady, unwavering, and final. It does not seek attention or validation. It simply exists as a reflection of her internal choice. People often misinterpret silence as calmness or indifference, but it is neither. It is deliberation and resolution. She has processed her feelings, examined the patterns, and made a conscious choice about how to respond or not respond. By withholding her words, she is not punishing anyone. She is asserting control over her own life and emotion. This is a sign of strength, not weakness. It is the moment when she has decided that she will no longer be swayed by external factors or unmet expectations. Her decision is made, even if it is not yet visible to the outside world. A silent woman has also moved from hope to acceptance. She's likely hoped for change, for understanding, for recognition, and for emotional reciprocity. When these hopes are repeatedly unmet, she recognizes that continuing to speak will not create the reality she desires. Silence is the outcome of this recognition. It is the result of a woman realizing that her emotional energy is too valuable to waste on efforts that do not yield the respect, love, or attention she deserves. By the time a woman becomes silent, her decision is complete. She may still physically be present, but her mind, heart, and emotions have already acted. She has chosen her peace over conflict, her self-respect over validation, and her clarity over chaos. Silence is not the absence of thought, it is the presence of finality and internal decision made long before anyone else notices. And once she reaches this stage, it is nearly impossible to reverse because it is based on deep understanding, reflection, and self-awareness. Her silence is her choice, her power, and her final unspoken declaration. Silence is not about revenge. This is a common misconception, and it could not be further from the truth. When a woman stops speaking, it is not because she wants to punish you or make you feel guilty. It is not because she is calculating ways to make you regret your action. Her silence is not a weapon, it is a shield. It is a protective measure she adopts when she realizes that speaking no longer changes anything. Every time she tried to explain herself, express her feelings, or communicate her needs and nothing shifted, she learned that silence is a more effective way to preserve her peace and maintain her dignity. A woman's silence is deliberate. She has already weighed her words, repeated herself enough times, and invested her energy into being heard. When those efforts consistently go unnoticed or unappreciated, she learns that continuing to talk only drains her further. Silence becomes a necessary response to the futility of repeated explanations. It is not sudden or impulsive. It is the result of reflection, observation, and careful consideration. She chooses to stop talking not out of anger but out of wisdom, realizing that her energy is valuable and that she cannot spend it on someone unwilling to listen or change. The quietness that comes from a woman is often misunderstood. People assume that if she is no longer speaking, she does not care anymore, but in reality, she cares deeply. Silence is a sign that she has internalized her decision, and it often hurts her more than it does anyone else. Speaking requires vulnerability, effort, and emotional investment. By stopping, she's protecting herself from further pain and disappointment. Her silence signals that she has accepted reality, that she has observed the patterns, and that she understands there is no more room for negotiation with someone who consistently disregards her voice. Silence also communicates clarity. While her words may have been ignored, her quietness speaks volumes. It tells you without needing to be spoken that she has reached the end of her patience and that her decision is firm. She has analyzed the situation and concluded that continuing to speak or argue will not bring about the change she seeks. Her silence is her final statement, one that cannot be contradicted or dismissed, because it comes from a place of deep understanding and certainty. It is not about controlling the other person. It is about controlling herself, her emotions, her energy, and her peace of mind. There is power in a woman's silence, and it should never be underestimated. While words can be argued over, dismissed, or misunderstood, silence is unmistakable. It carries weight because it comes from a place of decision. By choosing silence, she is asserting control over her emotional boundaries and refusing to allow further depletion of her mental and emotional resources. Her silence is steady, consistent, and unyielding because it is rooted in finality. She has chosen a path that prioritizes her well-being over seeking validation or acknowledgement from someone else. It is also important to recognize that a silent woman is not apathetic. Her quietness does not mean she no longer feels or no longer cares. In fact, it often reflects the opposite. She has felt, cared, and tried enough to reach the point where words are no longer necessary. Silence becomes her form of self-respect. It communicates that she has taken stock of the situation, recognized her value, and decided that she will no longer expend her energy on something that diminishes her. A woman's silence is often the calm before the storm, not in the sense of anger, but in the sense of finality. By the time she chooses to withdraw her words, she has already made her decision internally. She is resolved, composed, and firm in her understanding. She will no longer seek permission to be heard, nor will she tolerate repeated disregard. Her silence is an assertion of power, a declaration of autonomy, and a choice to preserve her peace above all else. When you encounter a woman who has gone silent, it is not an invitation to argue or plead. It is a warning, a reflection of the reality she has accepted. Silence is her final decision manifested in action, or rather, in restraint. It is the culmination of her experiences, emotions, and reflections, and it demonstrates her strength and wisdom. She may not speak, but her silence is louder than words ever could be, and it communicates a truth that cannot be ignored. She has chosen herself, and that choice is final.